What's up, fellow gamers? Phreak here, and it's time for a new video, something else I'm trying out here. People have tended to like my sort of mid-patch look at stuff, but I'm trying something a little bit new, and it's, hey, let's try to find some sort of hidden sleeper builds for the current patch of the game. Now, there's a couple of things here. Number one, these are not the literal 10 best champions in League of Legends. A lot of those are already very popular, but essentially I'm taking things that are, as far as I could tell, objectively strong and worth playing, either in every game or in a lot of game states, because they're winning a lot of games right now. And two, they either are a very low pick rate champion, and sometimes it's just because they're unpopular, okay, fine, but sometimes because they're hidden, or they're not in a primary role, or they're a moderately popular champion, but people aren't building them correctly, and we can get a lot of mileage out of building them in a different way. And so through all that, we're going to be talking about how to set up the champion in terms of when and where you should pick it in a lot of cases, and then coming into what the pregame looks like from runes and summoner spells, and then what you should be doing in the game itself in terms of item builds and some playstyle stuff. So let's get into our first champion here for our 10 hidden OP champs in 1024, and it's going to be top lane Sejuani. Now, there have been a lot of very skilled players like Alorum talking about how top lane Sejuani is the truth, and yeah, there's a lot of sort of credit to that. Now, she, as you can see here from the win rate via game time graph, she is generally an early game lane bully. As with what I believe a lot of tanks end up doing, they can fall off a little bit in the late game because eventually, no matter how well you're doing as a tank, especially a lane bully tank, the marksman and the mages will eventually outscale you. But because Sejuani is so lane dominant, you can win your lane early on. You can either use Demolish and get Rift Herald and knock down your turret and then move, or just because you have lane pressure, shove your lane, roam down to mid, kill the enemy mid laner, and snowball your Corki or your Azir or your Zed. That can be how you run it. You can go alongside with your jungler, etc., etc. A lot of junglers are melee. Melee champions stack up Sejuani's E passive. It all works pretty well. One quick playstyle thing to note is that you can wait on your R, use your Q, W, and E to set up the stun, the slow, the CC, and then ult afterwards. You don't have to go for the max range ults. Just guaranteeing the kill is enough, because keep in mind, Sejuani actually deals some pretty meaningful damage. Now, as far as some tech for this one, we should actually be going sorcery secondary and not inspiration, as many players are doing right now on live. A lot of this stuff makes a lot of sense already though. Grasp of the Undying, yes indeed. Top lane is very melee heavy, so we take Grasp against melee champions, no surprise there. Bone Plating lets us take long all-ins and guarantee we're getting the full value out of that rune. And just Overgrowth in general, because max health is a good stat on Sejuani. She has max health ratios on the kit, and so you want to keep that one going. Bone Plating is replaceable, of course, if there's different setups going on here, but you're also going to be running TP Ignite. The movement speed, the Q, the dash, that is not a primary trading pattern for Sejuani. You're often going to be in melee range of enemy champions anyway, using the W, auto-attacking them, and whatnot, so Q is often up for an escape tool. Instead, lethal threat based off how much flat damage you have and the percent health damage from shattering your passive, that's going to be a lot of damage output. Ignite can secure the kill, but of course TP is still pretty mandatory for top lane. Mana Flow Bend gives you enough mana to keep trading. Scorch gives you damage on your trading pattern because you are going to use W on it. It's a spell, it's going to work pretty rapidly. And worth pointing out that you want attack speed in your offensive rune shard. That's pretty standard. People are already doing that, but you really do want attack speed to get that fourth stack on your passive. It's the best way you're going to get damage in and of itself. And for your stat shards, really, you can go anywhere. You can go armor, you can go MR, you can go scaling health based on the matchup, based on how scared you think you're going to be. In the game itself, we're going to be learning W at level 1 in almost all cases. In some cases, there could be an invade, but you are going to learn Q at level 1. Data supports that rank 1 Q at level 1 has some upside, it has some winning situations, but in general, most players are going W. It is W max indeed. You're maxing Q second, because ultimately the mobility for Q is the most important thing. I believe that's pretty common as well, but it's worth pointing out that if we look at her itemization, Frostfire Gauntlet and Sunfire Aegis are both really comparable as options. You can go for a Doran Shield start or a Corrupting Potion start. Corrupting Potion, of course, gives you more mana and more damage, so you can bowl your opponents out, but win rate doesn't suggest that one is very much better than the other. Doran Shield seems to be very slightly win rate positive compared to Corrupting Potion, but by a pretty small margin, so I'm including both. And again, you are looking to go pretty aggressive. Now, a few things worth noting here that people aren't doing. So one, because we're already getting mana from Mana Flow Bound, we don't have to go early Fimbulwinter. Getting Warmogs as our second item seems to be definitively the best possible option. Again, she has some bonus health ratios via the W damage, so going into Warmogs gives you more damage off of the W, and as long as you have Mythic plus Warmog, you're going to be hitting the bonus health spike to turn on the Warmog's regen, which means from item 2 onwards, you are no longer killable because you are a full tank where you're just not going to die to an all-in unless you're waiting way too long in a Fiora fight. So you really aren't going to be one-shot unless you're trolling, and you're full health between every single wave, so you cannot lose lane anymore. It's actually impossible. You can always fight for the wave and then roam and get stuff done. It's going to work really well. You can tank towers, you can tower dive. It's going to look really good. Later on, you can go Fimbulwinter, then Frozen Heart, things like Gargoyle Stoneplate and Force of Nature as required. Want to point out here that I'm putting these boots down kind of in order of when you should buy them or in order of how often you should buy them. In general, plated steel caps are bought a bit too often. People buy them anytime their lane opponent is physical damage, and that's not really quite true. Keep in mind that plated steel caps, you are paying a lot for the 12% auto attack damage reduction. That is the majority of what you're paying for with that item. Which, in a lot of cases, right, if you're laning against a Jace or a Darius or whatever, you're taking a lot of damage that isn't actually physical auto-attack damage. Yes, Jace auto-attacks you some, but he's also landing a lot of Shock Blasts. He's also landing a bunch of other things, and so you should probably be getting other items before the Steel Caps because it's not actually that important overall. Obviously, the item can still be good, but in general, there is a lot of reason to say, well, we're probably fine with Sunfire Warmogs or Frostfire Warmogs. We'll go Merc Treads because of the Sejuani, or, because of the CC and team fights, the Nautilus Ultimates, the Syndras, things like that. One final point is that Sejuani is a primarily physical damage champion. Abyssal Mask does not make sense as Sejuani because you're not really ampling your own magic damage because you don't have very much magic damage. Next champion is Top Zac. And now Top Zac is another fairly aggressive champion, but we're seeing a very different build on him. One of the big wins out of the new season is actually good AP Bruiser health items. And this is where Zac is going to live. Now you can see he generally sits pretty well across the game. Now it's worth noting that, of course, Top Zac is not incredibly popular. And so a lot of the edges of this win rate with game time graph are really, really, really low sample size. And so you can't really rely on how good the data is. We can see, though, that Top Zac, for the most part, is strong at all points in the game. A quick playstyle point to bring up is anytime you're taking a trade in lane, you're going to Q a minion because you can't miss that skill shot, and then you auto-attack the champion with increased auto-attack range. Makes it very easy to get a yoink in on the enemy champion. So anytime you're going for a gank setup or a heavy trade, you think you can win, always start with Q a minion, Q the enemy champion. You can use that to land your E, you can use that to start spamming W and go on from there. But generally speaking, Q a minion then auto-attack is how you lead these trades. Now, Zac, I think, again, you should be trying to go for an AP Bruiser build, but if it's not going well, if you're getting countered, then of course you can go for a somewhat tankier build. Also, in general, much like with Sejuani, you can save your E to escape ganks. You can just take your trading patterns with just Q auto attack W using Grasp or Conqueror. We'll get into that in a little bit. And you can hold your E and use that to escape ganks later on. If you are playing really far up, okay, we're not going to E under the turret to go for kills. We're going to save it. We're going to E away. Keep in mind that you can basically instant cast that spell. If there is a Kassadin Q coming your way, which will interrupt your channel, you can let go early and get away. If there is a Darius walking up to apprehend you, let go, get out of the range, right? Apprehend has a quarter-second cast time. Let go in time. You're going to fly out of range. Apprehend is going to be no problem. Lee Sin's coming to go and, land a Q on you and go for a flash kick. Well, just really slingshot and go fly, 3,000 units away and don't get caught out. As far as the rune builds, we have two really close competitive options here. Now, as we talked about, you can save your E. TP Ignite is the optimal rune or summoner choice here because, again, you are actually somewhat of a bully. It can go really well. But you have options of going Conqueror or Grasp. Now, no matter which way you go, you're going to run the same secondary tree. So you're always going to run Triumph, you're always going to run Last Stand, you're always going to run Demolish, you're always going to run Overgrowth, but Legend Tenacity and Bone Plating are going to be skipped if you're not running the primary rune there. Now, Grasping and Dying, of course, very, very good if you really do need to scrap and get your health back up in laning phase, if it's all going to be short trades against your opponent. In general, Zac doesn't take that many good long trades, but if it's a situation where, actually, I'm going to fight an enemy tank and I'm just going to sit there on top of them, like I'm kind of fighting a Sejuani. I don't know if Sejuani is actually the right choice because Sejuani is very, very good early game. But anytime you have a slower kind of combat pattern where you kind of want to stick to them instead of them sticking to you, you can run Conqueror and just stack up ability power. Keep in mind, Conqueror got buffed in 10.24. Even though it's mostly used by attack damage champions, the Adaptive Force buff helps AP scaling as well. Keep in mind, it gives you Omnivamp. Zac does a lot of damage. He can absolutely make a lot of use out of Conqueror And you should be making these choices, pretty equivalently, right? If you're going to play a lot of top Zac, you should probably be in Conqueror games about half the time and Grasp games about half the time. Keep that in mind. Overall, that makes sense. You're always running Haste. Ability Haste is your offensive stat shard. I know a lot of people are running attack speed, but Haste is far, far, far better because you just want your abilities back up and you want to take those trades constantly. Ability Haste is a regen mechanic. It is a damage mechanic. It is everything about this champion, is getting your abilities off as often as possible. For the second shard, you really don't care about getting more ability power. Just run anything that's defense. For the third shard, it's all defense, so pick whatever makes sense based on the matchup that you're in. As far as the actual game itself, we are learning W at level 1. In general, that is going to be better trading for us. Q does very, very little damage. We are not running Aftershock. We simply do not care about what Q does for us, but W has a very short cooldown. As long as you can get your blobs, it is health positive. The way the blobs are coded is that as long as both players are walking at normal speed and attempting to get the blobs, Zac will always get there first. It is intended to be Zac favored, but not 100-0. It's like, well, he'll usually get them, but if he's not going right away, or he can be zoned out, or he can't walk that far up, then it can be traded against. Generally, that means that spamming your abilities is going to be health positive, but again, save your E. You are indeed going to be maxing E. It is going to be W second. Q's rank up is very, very poor. You never want to put more than 1 point into that ability, but you are going to learn at level 2 because it does give you some trading. WQ, get your blobs, get a second W is a pretty decent trading pattern. As far as opening builds, Doran's Shield Potion is standard. You can go Dark Seal. It's greedy, but if your lane is really, really easy, you can do it and kind of stack up the Dark Seal ability power. It's okay. Again, Zac is meant to be a damage champion, more so than Sejuani, who's there for the crowd control. Zac is there to actually deal damage and kill, so Sunfire Aegis is far and away the best possible option. As far as boots, you can go Lucidity, you can go Sorks. It's really greedy, it's really squishy, but it is more damage. It can be quite good. In general, the way League of Legends works right now, getting 2 sources of flat pen is good enough. So for example, Luden's Tempest plus Sork Shoes, but not also going for Shadow Flare makes a lot of sense for mages. In this case here, we're getting Abyssal Mask, and so Abyssal Mask plus Sork Shoes can also be a pretty good source of flat pen. It means that you're going to be targeting backline as Zac, because if you're going, Abyssal Mask Sork Shoes against, MR stacking Sejuani or Maokai or something, that's probably not going to work well for you, but it will work against, the mid laner and the bot laner and oftentimes the jungler here. So it can work out here, but in general, again, as a melee damage-focused champion, Tenacity is a very important stat for you. You want to get back on the targets. You want to get out of those stuns, get out of those slows, and stick to your opponent. So Merc Treads are going to be, I would say, your most common option, even if you do have a lot of AD lanes that you're up against. Again, always Sunfire Aegis, you are a damage champion. And it's worth pointing out that if you aren't feeding, it is always Demonic Embrace second. We are getting that AP conversion from health going right away. We're getting the 2% max health per second burn because we're a melee champion. We're getting something like 85 ability power out of this item. It's a source of flat health, which is good for making our abilities heal us back up. Abyssal Mask third is going to be very common as well. And then honestly, we can look at Zhonya's if you want to go for something a bit more defensive. If we're looking to dive in, start the fight, but then Zhonya's because we're getting focused. But Warmogs makes a lot of sense here as well. You can eventually go for the real raw tank items like Spirit Visage and Thornmail if you need to, but keep in mind that even the high health items like Warmogs still have 16 ability power on them thanks to things like Demonic Embrace. So as long as we're kind of health stack, it's going to look pretty good. So AP, Bruiser, Zac is actually pretty strong overall. Next up, we have a very, very bit of dark tech here. This is super underground, but I'm actually pretty confident this is a good build. It's AP Bruiser Shyvana in the jungle. Now, for a long time, people have been playing Nashor's Tooth, Night Harvester, Dark Harvest, AP Shyvana, and that build has, for the last 4 or 5 years, generally speaking, been weaker than her Bruiser builds. It's been weaker than going for a Divine Sunderer or a Trinity Force or a Blade of the Ruin King, and just playing for a Bruiser on-hit build, using Press the Attack and doing all this. So here's a build that combines the two and gives us the best of all of the worlds. So we can see here that Shyvana overall is a mid-game snowball jungler. Once you get to your sort of first or second item, you can start taking over the fights. As with any ult-based jungler, just show up to a side lane, find a squishy, ult on top of them, fight with your teammates, pick off a kill that way, and just chain farm and farm and farm and get your gold income going. Get the 2 items, but every time you have an ultimate, use that to dive someone. If all you do is force a recall, that's good enough. But basically, okay, is my ult coming up soon? Okay, we're gonna take Raptors, we're gonna take Krugs, and we're gonna go get bot lane. And we're just gonna blow our ult. We're gonna deal 600 damage. We hit our buttons. We walked out. We didn't tower dive. Okay, Our bot lane got 2 free turret plates, or I got a dragon, or whatever, but their bot lane was forced to recall. They have no pressure. They're going to give up 200 gold to the minions if they try to defend dragons, so let's do a thing out of that. But you're going to play all about temp. You're going to play all about maximizing your time spent. If you're doing something, do it now, make it happen, and then go do something else. This will work generally pretty well for Shyvana. Fight every time your ultimate is up. So you're going to be doing pretty standard AD on hit Shyvana stuff. So you're running Press the Attack, you're running Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace. You are, again, jumping in, trying to deal damage. You are a damage champion, right? Sort of like with the Zac one from before. And it actually looked pretty similar when you take a look at it. But we're running, really offense focused as far as the defensive stat shard. Armor, of course, makes us healthier in the jungle. But we can go scaling health, no problem, because Shyvana prints a lot of free armor and MR in her build. And getting bonus health will scale some of her items. But we are basically trying to run low cooldown summoner spells, right? Smite and Ignite. With Nimbus Cloak, we're getting a lot of movement speed out of that one. We're going to be running Blue Smite. Coup de Grace can be switched for Last Stand in some cases, but essentially, right, we are trying to stack as many reasonable sources of movement speed as possible, getting in there, fighting people, and just stacking through ultimate and fighting again, stacking through ultimate, fighting again, and burning summoners every time we dive on. And we're just we're almost an assassin. We're just kind of jumping in, dealing a bunch of damage. And here is our build. So the best way to clear, by the way, is learning E at level 1. The flat damage, the percent max health damage on hit when we're clearing the first camp, is the best way to clear your blue or your red. You learn W, the AoE clear is really good for there. And actually learning Q at level 3 appears to be highest DPS because it lets us kind of burn through something like a Big Wolf or Gromp or whatever. With the E stacks on, the attack reset is more damage than just getting a W rank up overall. We are overall maxing W first. We are maxing E second. And it is all about sticking on top of the enemy champion. So Blue Smite for movement speed. Frostfire Gauntlet is our first item, by the way. We are using a tank mythic here because it gives us crowd control. It gives us a slow. So when we ult on as Shyvana and we auto attack once with our Frostfire Gauntlet, or if our ult is down and we have to Blue Smite to get into range, as soon as we land an auto attack, we have slowed the enemy champion. We can stick onto them for longer when we do more damage. Shyvana's primary weakness is a lack of crowd control, and so both our summoner spell choice and our mythic choice gives us crowd control. From there, we are trying to get Mercury Treads. We want to be able to stick to our opponents. We want tenacity. We want to shake off that charm. We want to get out of those slows, those withers as soon as possible, and get back onto the enemy champion. And we are going Demonic Embrace, Cosmic Drive. That is the primary build. All right. We have a very, very, very long duration melee champion continually damaging ability in our W. We're going to constantly apply Demonic Embrace during these fights. It is going to give us a lot of damage. We are going to just belt out AoE magic damage in melee range, and it's going to be very strong. Cosmic Drive gives us a bunch more health. It gives us a bunch of ability haste because we are just jamming through abilities. We don't have mana. We just want to press buttons as fast as possible. Constantly press W, constantly press E, constantly auto attack. Bonus movement speed is going to feel very, very good as well. Ability haste gives us more Ws for more movement speed. It also gives us just outright movement speed as Cosmic Drive itself. It's all going to feel very, very good. If we're snowballing, we can then go Abyssal Mask as a offensive defensive item. It gives us 20 magic penetration, which is very good. It's basically 20 magic MR shred actually, so it'll help the mid laner that you're diving for as well. Your Corki is going to do bonus damage because you're lowering the opponent's MR by 20. We can go for something like a Stone Plate. We can even go for something like a Shadow Flare. Keep in mind, right, we're trying to finish these kills. We're diving into a big burst of damage. We've already got some flat bend from Abyssal Mask. If we're going to continue to scale really aggressively for damage, we can go for a Shadow Flare, get more flat pen. As long as they have 1,000 health or fewer, we're getting the full 20 flat pen out of it. This gives us 40 flat pen in our build. Keep in mind, Shadow Flare itself has health on it, so it's going to actually scale up our Demonic Embrace as well. And we are just a Bruiser damage champion. I know we're seeing a bit of a trend here, right? But AP Bruiser builds are very good, and they haven't been discovered for a lot of champions yet in the new season. And Shyvana is one of them that's going to work very well, just like Zac. So I think this is everything we have to talk about. So we'll move on to our next option. This is one that I was playing a little bit of last season, but it's still very good and players still have not caught on. People are still in this mindset of melee champions must be tanky or they're not good, and it's simply not true. Trinity Force Hecarim Jungle is the best Hecarim build. You spike really hard in the mid game from basically one item onwards. You can carry for a while. You are, again, an ultimate-based jungler, so you're going to play greedy, you're going to hyper clear your camps, you're going to play for high gold income, and then when your ultimate is up, you are going to kill someone. You are meant to win every single duel you can find and then end the game quickly because Hecarim does fall off. You want to keep the map split up. He is not really a team fighter. Hecarim is not ever going to get these 5-man fear ultimates. His E charge only hits one champion. His Q and W have AoE, sure, but really, you're only putting damage on one champion, so your self-omnivamp is only really going to happen on the one champion you are killing. He is really about singling out one champion. Surviving the second champion who's hitting you back, like, think about a Zed trying to all in and kill, a Crown Guard Victor. Like, it's going to take you a while to kill that champion. It's going to be tough. You're not going to do a lot of damage. And if Vayne is right behind him, Vayne's going to kill you by the time Victor dies. Hecarim gets to just kind of dive the Victor, push him into the enemy team, and survive the Vayne until Victor dies and get out. Now, yes, Hecarim, if he's headed ahead enough, can win the 1v1s, but you're generally trying to force 2v1s where you're just going to land the crowd, where you're going to find the damage, you're going to kill an enemy champion, and you're going to keep scaling from there. So you are going Conqueror. Keep in mind, Predator has been nerfed, so we are back to Conqueror here on this build. Attack speed or ability haste in the stat chart is pretty negotiable. The defense chart is pretty negotiable on, scaling health or armor or MR. If we really want to go aggressively, we can swap out Legend Tenacity for Legend Alacrity and do even more single target damage. It'll give us a little bit of faster jungle clear. Keep in mind, Legend Alacrity does have some attack speed on 0 stacks. So you actually do have a faster clear by running Alacrity. You'll save a little bit of time on your jungle clear, which can matter. In general, though, again, we're trying to stick to a target, so Tenacity is usually the better option. We're also running Unflinching. Like, we are really, really stacking Tenacity here because we just want to stick to our target and kill them with the raw damage output we have out of Conqueror and all of our abilities. But we want to keep in mind here that we are basically an assassin. We are not playing a tank. This is Hecarim. We are coming in to kill things as fast as possible. 24 gives us much, much, much more damage than Divine Sunderer. We've already got our W and Triumph for drain tanking. We're going to have things like Death's Dance later on for surviving damage. We don't need to go for the healing of Divine Sunderer. We're not taking these long 5-minute laning phase scraps where one of us gets ground out. We're going to full heal off of every jungle camp we ever clear. We're going to show up into a lane. We're going to kill whoever we're killing. That champion is dying, and we're going to snowball from there. That is how Hecarim works. So QWQ is the first 3 skill levels. This means we are trying to get level 4 before Scuttle, which is a full clear, or we're smiting to finish off Scuttle, right? Because if we smite Scuttle, it has like 180 health left, as long as the jungler's not on the screen. Smite auto Q is almost going to one-shot Scuttle Crab for the first time around. We're always level 4 once that happens. Hecarim can full clear with a decent leash and actually be level 4, ready to fight for Scuttle as it spawns. Again, with a good leash, it's possible, as long as you kite your camps well. Of course, we are Q-max. We're maxing E second. W is a 1-point wonder. You do not absolutely have to go Blue Smite. You do have a lot of movement speed already on the kit. Your options are already pretty good for that one, but if you need to go Red Smite for dueling, that is certainly possible. Blue Smite is a little bit higher win rate on average, but that still means that there are going to be some games where Red Smite makes more sense. If the enemy jungler is going to be very reliably getting on top of you, if they're going to be able to, land their skill shots or jump on top or fight you a lot and you have to fight them back, Red Smite is pretty valuable. If the top lane you're chasing after is a Riven or something, movement speed slows aren't going to matter, but, lowering her damage back against you is going to. If it's a really bursty jungler like, a Talon or a Zed who can actually get a lot of damage off all at once, then you need to kind of get the damage reduction onto them to make that fight look a little better. That's possible here as well. Kian, another example of that one. So you're kind of looking at that one. But again, we're doing pretty standard smite into Trinity Force. We are rushing Boots of Lucidity. It is very important that we get a lot of ability haste, that we get out and we get a lot of damage done. Movement speed, ability haste, summoner haste, all these things are very, very, very valuable. It is really important that we do all this. If we are snowballing, we can build full assassin. We can go Trinity Force, Yomu's Ghostblade. This is a risky build. It is not every game, but if we are ahead, this is the best way to deal extra damage. It's out of combat movement speed to get yourself into another gank sooner. It's a ton of raw AD, as well as lethality to absolutely one-shot enemy champions, and it has an on-active movement speed buff that is going to guarantee we chase an enemy's movement speed, directly converts into attack damage. Yomu's is a very good snowball item for Hecarim, but again, it is a snowball item. It is not the default item. The very standard option of going Sterix makes a lot of sense. But this is what I want to point out to Hecarim players out there is you should not be building a tank item. If you're building a tank item, unless you're doing really horribly, right? If you had a bad start and you're 1-6 with 2 assists and you're behind, then okay, you know what? Sure. Right? After your Sterix, maybe you go Guardian Angel, maybe you go Spirit Visage or Force of Nature or Stone Plate, and you're like, look, all I can really do is just like ult the Ahri in a team fight and hope it's enough and hope I don't die too fast. If that's the case, if you're behind, fine. But if you are doing remotely well at all, keep building damage items. Hecarim will never be a true tank. You will never get the same kind of durability you're going to get out of a Sejuani or a Dr. Mundo or a Malphite or an Ornn. You are still going to lose to that Vayne if you don't one-shot her. So build to one-shot her, right? Keep building damage. After Sterak's Gauge, build a Death Stance. After that, it's a Guardian Angel. After that, it's a Black Cleaver. We are always building items with attack damage on them because we need to finish getting these kills. We want to keep splitting the map up. We are basically an assassin. We want to keep absolutely just destroying enemy champions. That is how we're playing the champion out. Next up is Zilean Mid. Now, people definitely know about Zilean. Zilean is a reasonably popular support who's pretty good. We know we see Zilean Mid in pro play some, but Zilean Mid is a very good solo queue pick as well. Specifically, he is a very strong counter pick into assassins, not only because you can survive the all-in from the Zed himself. Keep in mind, right, Zed puts the ulti down, he presses buttons. When you see that you've got the mark over your head that you're going to die to death mark, self-cast R, you trade ult for ult, and, you know, Zed doesn't have his kill pressure on you anymore. Meanwhile, you still have very strong wave clear, and it's going to look pretty good. Now, Zilean in general is a scaling pick. Of course, wants to give his teammates bonus levels. You know, get your jungler to level 5 early, get him to level 6 early. It's going to be pretty powerful. If you roam down a bot lane, you give an extra level to your AD carry. That's going to be meaningful. But just hitting a level 6 power spec in general is going to be a really big deal, so you try to have that one happen as much as you can. But it is really important, right? You can see how bad his win rate is pre-20. There are a lot of Zileans who open mid and surrender. Zilean is a very, very weak early game champion. Before he has all four ranks for his abilities, it's very hard to land a meaningful combo for damage. You don't have good wave clear yet until, you know, a fair bit of ability power and higher rank bombs. It costs a fair bit of mana to do so as well. He kind of wants to hit 2 items. It takes a while to get online as Zilean. You are going to give up mid pressure. You know, there's a decent chance that you get double scuttled. Your jungler gets double scuttled because Zilean does not have mid pressure in the early lanes. Almost every other champion is going to have mid pressure on him. That's just how it's going to work. But once Zilean gets out of the early laning phase, he has very good wave clear. He can get down the side lanes, and he can really be a huge force multiplier. You know, we haste up the Hecarim. He dives into the back line. You know, our Vayne can go tower dive. Don't worry. She's got move speed and an ulti on her. Like, these are going to work really, really well. And the fact of the matter is, right, like, Zilean ultimate is a coordination testing ability, and yet, despite the fact that he should probably be almost a pro play only champion because he's, you know, sore coordination testing because you can whiff ultimates off of people, you know, not knowing when to go in and when to follow up and whatnot, he's still a high win rate solo queue pick, and he is very, very, very good. So I recommend playing Zilean Mid. It is a great way to gain elo. Let's talk about the setup. We are running Flash, and we're running TP or Exhaust. TP, of course, lets us react to a bot lane dive. No matter how doomed a bot lane dive is or a top lane dive is, as long as you're there in time, you can save the champion with an ulti, and suddenly the entire thing is turned around. A summoner spell to deny a kill and possibly turn him back around is a very, very big deal. Exhaust is still playable, though, if you don't think you're going to get around the map, if you don't think you're good at TP, if you don't normally run TP, Exhaust is still a pretty good option. And it's worth noting as we kind of look at the runes and everything else, it is good for Zilean to be self-sufficient so he doesn't have to self-ult. It is generally a good thing if the enemy champions can force Zilean to self-ult and then kill his own teammates. That's generally what people are going to be looking to do. So you want to be sort of a bit self-sufficient, which means actually, you know, we often are running armor or MR for our flex shard. We are often running, you know, anything in the defense shard. Obviously, you have to run defense in some cases, but you know, we're looking at basically powering up, right? We're trying to amplify our strengths because there's really no way to rune to cover up our weaknesses in the early game. So, yep, we're going to stack mana regen with Mana Flow Band. We're going to get Transcendence, which stacks up over levels. We're getting Gathering Storm, which stacks up over game time. And we're just going to survive and outscale because raw AP is one of the best stats we could possibly get. Basically, Zilean scales off of 2 stats, and that's raw AP and ability haste. And so we're taking runes that give raw AP and ability haste. Mini Dematerializer, also very good because we can... Basically, it's very easy for us to AoE down minion waves, right? It's pretty easy to kill casts, pretty easy to kill melees, but cannons take a lot longer, sitting there with auto attacks, sitting there waiting for double bombs, and so we can dematerialize the first few, and then with that damage amp, we can get a bit more damage out of our time bombs to maybe knock them down a little bit easier. So we're just all about, you know, running fast, getting into places, and being helpful. And so our build is actually, and this has not been done very commonly. For some reason, people aren't building it this way, but QWQEQ is the correct skill rank order, which is, right, bomb, reset, bomb, then we get slow at 4. The better we can do at killing minions, the better our landing phase looks. We should be looking to get points in queue as fast as possible. We generally want the resets because then we can use the bombs to kite stuff out. In general, yes, the slow can be useful, of course, but the lane pressure can often get rid of a lot of possible dives because the wave isn't going to your own turret. We are maxing Q first, of course, it is time bomb, but maxing the reset and maxing the slow are actually very, very close in win rate. So there's going to be games where you're like, actually, yeah, I want to really spam double bombs. There's going to be games where you really, really care about just providing haste at all to a teammate. And so getting your Hecarim jungle or whatever to run even faster and just getting him out there can be the better build sometimes. So keep that in mind that Emax second is a viable option. We have a lot of viable first item starts. Basically all these typical AP starts can work. However, we are always going Everfrost. And then from there, we're buying all the ability power haste items. So it's basically always Archangel Staff after the buffs. It is always going to be Cosmic Drive. It is always Boots of Lucidity. And then from there, we're like, yeah, almost always it's Death Cap. And then we probably pick a defensive option of Banshee's Veil or Zhonya's Hourglass. Again, you want to be self-sufficient as Zilean so that you don't have to self-ult just because Syndra pressed QER on you. If you have to self-ult a Syndra combo, you're stuck in place, their team's going to collapse on you, and you're probably going to die. But if your Banshee's Veil blocks the stun, you're getting away from Syndra, and you're not going to get killed, at least not in a bad spot, and it's going to look a lot better. So fully recommend getting at least one defensive option. You can skip Death Cap for one of the other ones, but you generally don't want to, right? Everfrost, Boots, Archangels, Cosmic Drive, and there's only 2 slots left for Death Cap, Banshees, and Zhonya, so pick 2 of the 3. As a quick final thought, as far as how to sort of play it out correctly, the optimal combo is EQ-WQ, so slow, bomb, reset, bomb, and then wait. You're easily going to sit there for a little while. Once the bomb stun has ended, then you slow, right? So it's EQ-WQ, wait a full second, then slow, QWQ. Right, like that's how you're running this basically, or WQ, right? Like once you have enough haste, you can kind of chain it together like that, and they're always slowed into a stun, into being slowed, into a stun, into being slowed, into a stun, and that's how you can combo it out, and you can kind of like infinitely CC a champion where they can't run fast or they're stunned the other time of it. It works really, really well. Next bit of tech, it's a champion that we have seen pick up a lot in popularity, but there have been some poor builds coming out, so I want to kind of set the record straight. Corki Mid is a very good champion and another scaling pick in the mid lane. Now, I want to point out, Corki is a magic damage champion despite being a marksman. His damage is primarily magic, around 80% or so. He is weak to assassins. The lanes can look really bad against someone like Katarina or Zed or Fizz, but he outscales assassins and eventually is durable enough to not get one-shot by them and is going to be okay. Of course, your ultimate is an ammo system. You throw about a bunch of rockets, but the real ultimate is the package. Pick this up, get a bunch of move speed, and find a side lane to kill. Just grab package, like run through your red buff jungle through Tri-Brush, and just go kill a bot lane. If your opponents are not respecting the fact that you have package, it is absolutely free kills. In general, err on the side of getting behind them. You should be in a 3-on-2 or a 3-on-1 or a 2-on-1. Walking over the package is going to absolutely kill you. The damage per second is absurd. The slow is absurd. It is really, 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 really strong. As long as you can knock them back into your team, it's going to look really, really good. It is a guaranteed kill every few minutes, and you can snowball the game that way. And I mean, the fact that you can have really, really strong pressure at, 10 minutes into the game, despite not even having a mythic yet sometimes, and just showing up in a bot lane and forcing a kill when you haven't even power spiked yet, that's really, really powerful. Now, the best Corki build, as far as we can tell, is going to be First Strike. Now, it's only being picked about 1/3 of the time right now on Corki. It is his overall best keystone. I'm sure there are matchups you can't really run First Strike too easily because you're going to be easily poked. But ultimately, because so much of the game is around using long-range rockets, you get to actually play poke yourself post-level 6. You have package ganks going on. You can actually get a lot done by running First Strike, even if your lane matchup doesn't really support it too well. Actually, one thing I want to point out before we talk about... we're still in the right spot. We're running Magical Foot, we're running Biscuits, we're running Cosmic Insight, we like Conditioning and Overgrowth. The Resolve tech is underrated here. Resolve is actually very, very good. I know people are doing a lot of other options on him, but actually getting raw durability is valuable. This is how you survive those assassin matchups, because you're going to be going shield bow in a lot of cases, and conditioning is 9 flat armor and MR, and then 5% of your new numbers. That's going to do a lot to combat lethality, right? Corki's normally going to have like 35 magic resist at level 11, but instead it's going to be +9. It's going to be like 45, and then another 120 of that puts us at another, 3 more above that. So now we're at like 47-ish armor and 47 magic resist without investing at all in magic resist. And our raw health is going to be up by a couple of hundred here as well, and it's going to actually look pretty good. This gets Corki above the assassin threshold in a lot of cases, and it's going to feel pretty good overall. And you can always supplement with things like a Wit's End if you really need to, or a Zhonya's if you really need to. We're going to try not to if we can help it. We can tend to run scaling health here, no problem. Corki being ranged is not going to be one shot super duper early on. Again, we're going to have conditioning online overall, so just stacking health is actually pretty valuable here, and it's going to work pretty nicely. Attack speed and attack damage are pretty obvious picks here for the stat shards there as well, and it's going to look pretty good. Biscuits and Cosmic, of course, are negotiable on the runes, and it's going to be a pretty good look. In general, you have it in text right here, but Resolve Secondary is underrated on Marksman. I've been seeing chatter yet again this season about people saying that, as a Marksman, they feel too squishy, they don't feel strong enough. Well, keep in mind that a lot of the regen tools have been nerfed a lot, right? The Ravenous Hunter has been nerfed, I think, 4 times now since Runes Reforged came out. At a certain point, realize you can go Resolve Secondary. One thing to note in the old sets of runes and masteries is that back in the day, right, marksmen were running, right, armor seals and magic resist glyphs, and oftentimes even armor and health quintessences. And they would also run the Resolve tree in masteries. A lot of like mid-elo players in solo queue would run the precision tree, and they'd run bonus damage and things like that. But the pro players would actually run Resolve. They'd get flat health, they'd get bonus armor and MR, because that would actually win them more games. I truly recommend for everyone who's out there saying, hey, I don't feel too good in bot lane, you can run Conditioning and Overgrowth, and by the time we're in the team fight phase, you're going to have a big extra suite of health, armor, and magic resist, and it's going to make a very big difference in surviving. I'm seeing people say, oh, shield isn't enough. It's not giving me enough durability. I still die. I don't have great MR options. Wit's End doesn't have crit on it. And Quicksilver Sash is kind of trash. And Mob and Mortius is really bad. You have rune options. You can take rune options and they will work pretty well for you. So Corki, in addition to other marksmen, can take these runes and it'll feel pretty good. As far as Skeletal is concerned, Corki's rank E at level 1. It has 120 base damage. Absolutely nothing compares. No one can out-trade Corki auto attacks with E at level 1. It is not possible. He always wins. You can't dodge the E. You can dodge the Q, right? You can dodge Phosphorus Bomb. You cannot dodge this. It also shreds, I believe, 8 armor and MR, which is a lot when enemy mages have, 30 MR into 26 armor. It's a pretty meaningful amount of damage. And by the way, it's split damage. So even when this opponent mage knows your Corki, knows you do magic damage, and they run a magic stat shard, you still deal 60 physical damage with this against their 26 base armor that you're shredding down to 18. This is a very, very, very good ability. Rank E at level 1. If you happen to find yourself in an all-in, you can learn W at level 2 and just use your second E plus auto attacks and force a flash or force a bad recall. That is possible, but eventually we are going to max Q. We're of course maxing E second. As far as our itemization start, we actually have several options. Corki is actually very, very wide open in builds. We can do tier starts, Doran starts, or Cull starts, all of which can add potions. And then as far as our first item, it could be Manamune or Essence Reaver or Shield Bow. These 3 items are actually in order of win rate, which to be fair is a little bit biased. Our Corkis who aren't doing too well will often go for Shield Bow for the durability. But in general, right, always get these 3 items. It's non-negotiable. You are always buying these 3 items. You can buy them in any order you want. And then from there, because we have Reaver and a Shield Bow, we can go Infinity Edge, but also we can go Rapid Fire Cannon, because all we really care about is getting our auto attacks off at all. Keep in mind, we have a very low cooldown spell in the rocket, so we can always get Sheen procs available. And so a lot of our damage is actually coming from Sheen procs themselves. They're coming from spells. So we actually don't care that much about the crit damage because we're not that much of a crit marksman. So Infinity is not quite as good as you might think. Again, Corki is a magic damage champion. He is always going Sork Shoes. That is always the option here. Guardian Angel is not a bad option. So, among your last items, kind of pick 2 of these 3. GA is very good at making sure you survive Zed and whatnot. Rapid Fire Cannon is very good at applying damage, but of course Infinity Edge is still a very good snowball option because it is the highest teamfight DPS possible. One final thing I'm seeing is people are trying Ravenous Hydra. At no stage of the game is Ravenous Hydra as good as the other options. Do not go Ravenous Hydra on Corki. It is not the correct build. You have enough life to do a Shield Bow. You have enough raw AD with everything else. It is not the best option. Next up is Samira in the bot lane. Now, Samira got buffed in 11.24. People still aren't building her correctly, so I'm here to shed some light into what's going on. First of all, Samira with a tank support is a very, very good early game lane bully. She was much more of a bully earlier on in League of Legends, but still has pretty strong early game power. In any time where you have like a Leona or a Thresh who's, able to land a Flay or an early Zenith Blade and start scrapping, you can learn E at level 1, dive in for an all-in, deals a pretty good damage with your sword, dealing bonus damage is going to look pretty good overall. You do have some decent early game bully power, but you are otherwise kind of a scaling pick where you can absolutely take over team fights. What's nice is she has some really, really strong counter matchups. She beats hook champions. If you see a Thresh winding up, you see a Blitzcrank winding up, you see a Pike lining up, you press W. Yeah, your cooldown is 30 seconds long, but their cooldowns aren't that much shorter, and you can play around that 15, 20-second difference. Also, Pike. When Pike goes in and make a big combo happen, Pike's stun is a projectile. His E, the ghost that follows through, is a projectile, so if Pike E's through you, you laugh, you auto-attack, you Q, you press W, you block his damage, you're already 3 stacks of passive, and you can just win from that point on, because at that point, once he starts channeling his Q hook, you can E through him, you can do whatever you want, you probably dodge the skill shots. It's a really, really easy matchup, and he can't do anything about it. It's pretty strong. Samira has some very, very good matchups. Again, she beats hook supports. She likes tank supports. It's a pretty good look overall. She's a pretty strong champion. So here's some of the parts where people aren't building her quite correctly. So first of all, Presence of Mind is out and Triumph is in. This by itself is several % win rate positive. Now that her ult doesn't cost mana anymore, you no longer need Presence of Mind to get your spells off. You can actually just feel good running Triumph and healing back up. Samira is a reset champion. She wants to constantly keep re-healing herself and getting her health bar back up, and so Triumph is a really big way to make that one happen. Snowballing off of the kills and assists, getting more gold, snowballing faster and faster, right? As a reset champion, she wants snowball, she wants her health bar back up, she wants to keep getting more kills. This is very, very valuable. Bone Plating and Revitalize are negotiable as resolve options. Keep in mind that most Samira players are playing Domination Secondary, right? They're running Taste of Blood and they're running Ravenous Hunter, but Ravenous Hunter got nerfed, and instead getting pure burst durability is better. Bone Plating is going to give you a lot more health in an overall laning phase in a lot of these cases, and it's going to give you way more health in an actual team fight where you're going to try to not get killed by a Zed or an Aphelios or an Ahri or whatever. Revitalize multiplies actually everything you ever buy. The only thing it will not multiply is Shield Bow's lifesteal, but it affects Doran's Blade because it affects Omnivamp. It affects Conqueror because that's functionally Omnivamp. It affects the Shield of Shield Bow. It affects the Heal of Triumph. 5% heal and shield power affects absolutely everything, and the 10% healing amp when you're at 40% health or lower, which is pretty commonly, and we're running Last Stand, affects literally everything. It will affect lifesteal, it will affect all parts of shield, but it will affect everything on the kit, and so you're going to be a really good reset champion when you've got Last Stand going on, when you've got Revitalize putting your health bar back up, when you've got shield bow popping at 40%, getting amplified by 15% from the 5% shield and heal power and the 10% from Revitalize, and Last Stand pops, and that's going to be about the time you're finally at 6 stacks of passive, you have an S rank, and you ult. The whole thing lines up really well. It is a sort of cohesive rune synergy here. Other final thing to point out that people are building incorrectly, people are running attack speed as their first stat chart on Samira, but raw attack damage is better. Samira has very, very poor attack speed scaling. It only affects her basic auto attacks, but in an ideal world, Samira is only basic auto attacking about 3 times in a team fight, right? Her basic combo is auto Q, auto E, auto Q, ult. And without any reasonable attack speed, you just have that on time anyway. Like, her base attack speed is actually just pretty reasonable overall, just from leveling up and running Legend Alacrity as her only source of attack speed. It's going to be good enough. It's going to feel really good. It's going to work really, really well. Flash plus Exhaust, by the way, is her ideal option. If, in general, you want to run a tank support who's running Ignite, you're running Exhaust. Non-heal bot lane is underrated. Obviously, the value of heal goes up when you're running Revitalize, so you can still make that as an option. You can run Barrier if you really don't think your teammate needs any help. If you're running, for really, really selfish options, pop Barrier once you're down to 40% health. You get more out of Revitalize. You get, maximum value out of Last Stand. That's the tech for Barrier. But in general, anytime you're fighting, just exhausting the Lee Sin and fighting him is going to work better than putting Barrier up, because cutting his damage by 1/3 is going to do more than the shield that Barrier gives in most cases. As far as the skill order is concerned, right, E or Q at level 1, and then the other one at level 2. We learn W at 3 so we can block hooks and whatnot. We're maxing Q first, we're maxing E second. We can actually go for a pretty solid longsword refillable start. That's actually not too bad. Doran's Blade, of course, is a possible option as well. We always go shield bow. With a quick thought that you can actually rush collector first item. If you're doing really, really, really well, first item collector is a great item. Lethality, keep in mind, is a stat that is better earlier game than later on, before people have bought more armor. Even if people aren't going to be buying armor, it still is slightly better early game than late game. If you're going to buy collector at all, it's actually a slightly better first item. Keep in mind that shield bow's shield scales with character level, so getting a shield bow second, you're kind of getting more of the shield bow in that way. That's not really exactly true, but its scaling is sharper than Collector's scaling, so in a sense, there is a real argument for if your lane is going well, Collector first, Shield Bow second is a completely reasonable option. Now, in general, for your second item option, Mercury Treads are very, very good. Cooldown Boots and Swifties are also pretty solid options. But in general, much like before, steel caps are somewhat overrated. The stun duration matters. Getting out of the CC is probably the reason you're going to be living, and not because you're taking 12% less damage from Phelios' auto attacks. That's usually not the important part here, because you're going to win Wall's ultimate anyway, and then just win that fight regardless. The 1v1 against Phelios is not that big of a deal. When the Fiora and the Darius are killing you, it's not because their auto attacks, because their spells do physical damage. It's not as big as you might think. Lee Sin is almost entirely spell-based. These steel caps are somewhat overrated. It's not actually that good of an item. It's just overbought. It's not bad. It's just overpurchased, right? It's overrated. That's all I'm saying. It's bought more than it should be. Okay. Anyway, the tech that I'm trying to introduce here as well is Collector second is fine, but if your opponents are already stacking armor, if your teammates are already a bunch of AD champions, if you're against steel caps, if there is a big beefy tank support in the jungle, in a tank support in the bot lane as well, and it's too much armor, you can go Essence Reaver second. Essence Reaver is a completely viable second item option. Yes, you lose lethality. Yes, you lose the execute, but it's 200 gold cheaper. And the proc damage is very, very good. Keep in mind, Samira's primary combo is auto Q, auto E, auto. Like, she is going to get several Sheen procs off, and there's no way she's not going to. This is literally how her kit functions. It's much like Corki, much like Jax, why they're all Trinity Force users. She has very, very good Sheen synergy. And right now, Essence Reaver on Samira is dark tech, but I've played it a few times. It feels really, really, really good. There's a lot of damage coming out of this one. You can E through mini wave and auto enemy champion. That's a 250 damage burst right there. It can feel really, really good. There's a lot of gameplay there. As far as your final items for options are, obviously there's defensive options like Bloodthirster and Guardian Angel. There's offensive options like Infinity Edge and Lord Dominus Regards. None of these are strictly better than others. There's even Death Stance and Mercurial Scimitar for even more defensive options out there. Scimitar obviously good if you're running into like a Malzahar or something, or even more crowd control you can't really deal with. For example, Nautilus Ultimate bypasses Wind Wall because it's underground. It's just actually not blocked by projectile blockers. So Nautilus can be something where you might need to run Merc Sim. Once the knockup is done, you can cleanse the stun and get away. That can all be pretty valuable. So things to think about with that one. Death Stance also pretty good. It's a bunch of flat armor. Even though the damage sort of mitigation is not as good as it is from melee champions, it's still very good overall and really worth considering. This is one that I used a lot in Season 2020 and is still incredibly, incredibly good and has not caught on very much. I do know there are some pro teams that scrim this a bit and know it's good and have it for certain options, but Karthus bot lane is very, very, very good. Now, if you compare him to other mage bot lanes like Ziggs is like way up here in the top left, and then he falls down over time. Karthus actually wants to spike at around 2 items. He has some decent early game laning phase though. If you have a CC support, he's really good with tank supports who can lock someone down so he can lay waste to get Dark Harvest off. He can do some really, really good damage. He is weak to zone control though, right? Kagha, who plays at long range, has a slow. Vayne, who condemns you back. Callista, who hops out of range all the time and can't be hit with Qs. Tristana, who can jump on you to all in, ult you out of range. Aphelios, again, who has really good zone control with red gun, with purple gun, with white gun. Like a lot of these do really, really well. If Karthus can't stick to a target, he is really, really, really weak, right? If Qs are dodged, he can't deal any damage. If he's out of range for E, he can't deal any damage. If his W slow doesn't mean anything because they have, their own slow at longer range or a dash of some kind, he doesn't do very much. So Karthus does have some very sharp matchups that are really, really brutal for him, but he is still an overall very strong champion. We run Flash Exhaust 100% of the time. Basically, if we can find ourselves a level 2 all-in where, we landed the Leona combo and, we're landing lay waste and everything else, and we can just exhaust the enemy champion so they can't fight back, it's going to look really good. We're going to win those fights. Dark Harvest is not negotiable. Taste of Blood, Eyeball Collection. Ravenous Hunter versus Ultimate Hunter is a close call. People tend to go Ultimate Hunter. It is not as good as you might think. Sustaining back up is very, very valuable. Keep in mind, Karthus gets to sort of print free stacks of Hunter via the fact that he can ult and cross-map the top lane or cross-map the jungler. And so just having a bunch of sustain means you will not get pushed out of the bottom lane, and that is very, very valuable. Taste of Blood Ravenous Hunter is going to combine to staying in lane, and that is really useful when, the bot lane cohort is a bunch of sustain, right? There are a bunch of enchanters out there, Nami's and Soraka's and Yumi's healing back up. Doran's Blade and Shield Bow are very common pickups. Like Lifesteal is common in bottom lane. Getting some for yourself is pretty valuable. Presence of Mind, basically not negotiable. Mana is just incredibly tight this champion. It's very important. Last Stand is really the reason why we're here, though, because Last Stand is at full power when you are dead. You get the full, I believe, 11% damage amp, which is absolutely absurd. 11% more damage is the best rune in the game for Karthus. It feels outstanding. We're running flat AP. We don't care about haste that much. Haste is overrated on Karthus because your Qs, you're waiting for the cast animation a lot of time anyway. It's not that big of a deal. Your E obviously doesn't scale off haste in any way at all. And you'd be surprised how often you don't need to actually mash on that ultimate. It's just not that big of a deal. Flat armor is almost always going to be run because, of course, that's kind of the lane that you're in. Proper skill order is QEQ. We are always going for the most damage possible. We're trying to get as much wave control as possible so we can last hit minions and keep the wave in a good state. Yes, we'll learn W at level 4. Okay, fine. We're going to max Q, we're going to max E, going to deal all of our damage. This is part of why, by the way, Karthus is good in the bottom lane. He doesn't scale his damage after level 13. More points in Wall of Pain is not very important. It doesn't do much. All we have left to look forward to is one more rank in the ultimate, which is nice, of course, but it's why Karthus is so good in the bottom lane, because you can kind of take the lower XP curve by sharing with another champion, and it's going to be fine. When worst comes to worst, if you're left alone, if your opponent's going for a big tower dive play, you can just choose to sit there and die on your tower and clear the wave. The wave is cleared, you die, but you don't lose a tower. Obviously, if they have Rift Herald, they get it anyway, but if they don't have Rift Herald and they're going for a big 3-stack wave with 4 champions and demolish, you can sit there and take one for the team, give up 450 gold, take your death, and kill the wave, and you save the tower, and your opponents and your teammates can cross map. It's actually quite good. Leander's Torment is not negotiable. It is easily and always his best mythic item. There's no choice here whatsoever. We are always Doran's Ring Start as well, by the way. Always Sork Shoes, and then always Shadow Flame. This is absolutely the build we're going for. Basically, again, 2 sources of flat pen is the right amount of flat pen in the game. It's going to look pretty good overall. We are going to deal true damage to all the squishy champions. Keep in mind, Shadow Flame always gives the full 20 flat pen when they have 1,000 health or less remaining. You are only ulting when your opponents have 1,000 health or less remaining. Shadow Flare is always 100% pure efficiency for Karthus Ultimate. It is always an outstanding choice. We are always buying Sork Shoe Shadow Flame after Leander's Torment. This is exactly the build. From there, we've got a bit of options. Demonic Embrace is good because we often are playing long duration team fights where even though we don't get as much out of Demonic Embrace, when they have a little bit of bonus health from Shadow Flare, it's fine. We still get some decent burn. It feels pretty good. We get the extra burn damage on our ultimate, so we get another, 4% max health following up our Leandry's burn. Sometimes we get a kill after the fact, which feels pretty good. We are obviously running Dark Harvest, so we have a lot of ways to add flat damage. We always want Void Staff and Death Cap. In pretty much any endgame build, they're just too good. Our role as Karthus is pure damage. So basically, Zhonya's and Demonic Embrace are somewhat negotiable against each other, but that's kind of where the build stops. Here's a little bit of Dark Tech. It is Ahri Support. She's actually quite good. And is worth picking up. So, obviously, if you're going to bring this one into your drafts, you pick it early. They think it's Ahri Mid. They kind of pick Ahri Mid. And it's not Ahri Mid, it's Ahri Support. You get a better looking matchup. She is functionally a hook support. She is Blitzcrank. She is Thresh. She is Pike. She is a hook support with 2.5 seconds of crowd control on the kit. That is among the highest of any champion in League of Legends that doesn't have to burn a Nautilus ultimate to do so. Charm interrupts dashes. She can break Leona. She can break Nautilus. She can break Thresh coming in. She can do a whole lot of really good things to break these champions down. It looks really good. Yasuo dash is a straight line. Yone dash is in a straight line. She is really good at interrupting these champions and ruining their day. She has hit confirms. It feels really, really good. Generally, of course, she is not a very popular champion. She doesn't have a lot of games down at support, so there is going to be some variance in this win rate graph, so I can't say for sure if she's an early game pick or a late game pick, but she is actually quite playable. The setup is Glacial Augment. You are running Hard CC, you're running Charm, and spoilers, you're going to be running Everfrost as well. Hard CC Glacial Augment is very, 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 very good. We'll see what Glacial Augment looks like long term, but it seems to be pretty effective so far. Futures Market versus Biscuits is negotiable in the second row down there. Attack Speed seems to be very clearly her best rune choice for stat shards in the offense category because you are taking early trades, you are charming, you're landing auto attacks. She is a damage champion. She's trying to deal damage. Yes, AP might make sense, but you are often auto attacking because you are a ranged champion in a duo lane. You are often autoing a Leona, autoing a Nautilus, to the point where we have actually seen for a lot of champions like Leona and Nautilus and Braum, where they run shoulder guards and not runic shield because the raw AD is better than ability power because they are actually punching champions a lot, and that is win rate positive. Pros have identified it as the optimal choice for them as well. So do not disrespect basic auto attacks for supports. Keep that in mind. Mana Flow Transcend is basically just kind of the only stuff that really matters. We are not really a damage champion, but haste is the part that matters. Getting our stuff back is pretty valuable. Cosmic Insight gives us item haste, which is a very, very big deal, of course, as well. We care about that a lot, so that is why we're picking it up. As far as our itemization is concerned, it is always Spell Thieves. It is always Everfrost over there. That is always what's going to be in the build. That's going to be no surprise here at all. And we are learning E at level 1, by the way. Generally speaking, just doing some Q damage is not very important. You want to look for an Invade, look for an E, look for a Charm. It'll look pretty good. Q and W at level 2 is pretty much whichever one you want to go for. If you land Charm, W is always going to hit the enemy champion. So it turns your Foxfire into Heat Seeking. That means your trade's better. It makes it a positive. It's something you're going to be looking at for the laning phase, which is why you might learn it at level 2. However, Q is good wave clear. Wave pressure is important. It is a valuable aspect of bottom lane overall. Anytime you get a good trade and your opponent's forced to recall, you generally want to shove your wave, get it onto the turret, and then take the recall. Depending on when it shoves, it can be a freeze for you. It might be we're greeting a second wave and then recalling late. But the faster you can clear these waves, the faster you can get back on the map and earn more gold and XP for your teammate. So your Q as wave clear is valuable. Supports. There is a lot of skill expression for supports. It does not sit around and shield people. There is so much you can do to dictate how the lane is played, and Ahri is no slouch because, again, she has AoE tools. We are maxing E first because the crowd control duration, though the cooldown doesn't change, though the damage rank up is only 30 per rank, the CC duration goes up by 0.6 seconds, and because Ahri is not a damage champion, she's a hook champion, we are maxing E. That is the best build for her. Keep in mind, supports get 1 fewer item slot because they are sitting on their Sightstone. So we have Mythic, Boots, and Sightstones. We only have 3 item slots otherwise. It is Cosmic Drive, and it is defensive options. It is ways of getting more ability haste. So this can be Wardstone, this can be Zhonya's, this can be Banshee's Veil. But your essential end game gameplay, right, is stacking ability haste, and it's with a, before haste, a 105-second cooldown ultimate for rank 2 of the ulti. It's dashing around, finding a Charm Everfrost combo, one or the other, right? If it's, oh, well, I got the Everfrost slow. Okay, well, I'll Charm. I got the Charm. Okay, we wait 2 seconds and we Everfrost root. Someone is dying when that happens. She is the preeminent late game pick champion. She is hard to kill with her ult and Zhonya's. Oh, did I ult in a bad spot? Okay, I have Zhonya's and I ult back out. I'm probably going to live through that one. I have Everfrost. I have Charm. No matter who I find, I can CC them and I can get out. I can run away or I can force that kill to happen. Ahri is a very, very good mid-game roam champion. She has decent wave control and really good pick damage. So now we go to our 10th champion. It is a champion, of course, we know exists, but there is some tech here that people don't realize, and it's Senna, carry, support. Of course, it's Senna support, but she's, of course, trying to be a carry. She is infinitely scaling. She goes up and up and up with time. It's worth noting, right, that she is sub 50% win rate, pre-25, pre-30. Now, some of this is because people aren't doing very well on her builds, so there are some bad builds out here, but of course, you can see that her win rate generally goes up and to the right. She scales up with time, because, of course, she infinitely scales with souls. No one is surprised by that one. Of course, Kraken Slayer, I've said it many times. I know people like her Kraken Slayer builds, so hey, look, if you just want to play attack speed Senna, I can't stop you, but it is her weakest build. But there are lots of good ones out there, actually. Her low health, of course, makes it a little bit risky. Her bad matchups are long-range champions like a Zyra or a Lux. AoE overall, things like Ziggs and Swain look pretty good against her as well. But she is very strong against low-range marksmen. Ironically, she counters Lucian. She's good into Samira. She's good into a lot of these kinds of things. Her good teammates are melee champions like Yasuo, because the lineup is perfect, right? She's throwing Q through her melee champion, hitting an enemy champion there as well. Also good alongside mages like Ziggs, Veigar, and Swain, or Karthus, because they're dealing magic, she's dealing physical. You can't counter build both at the same time. It's pretty easy. It's going to look pretty good. So, there are some champ select considerations where if you have these situations, she's really, 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 really good. But even in the average game, I think she's playable. So here's the first bit of tech, by the way. Fleet Footwork movement speed stacking is actually the build for Senna. Flash plus Barrier is her best option, or Heal or Exhaust. But Barrier is the best performance. Senna is very, very squishy. Often the first champion targeted. She has no innate escapes. She's not terribly fast. She's often the target, right? She can heal her teammates, right? If you go after the Callista, she can heal Callista. She can CC you. She can slow you down. And, Callista's probably going to live. If you go for Senna, Callista can't stop that. So Barrier often is a very good option for support Senna. But yes, Fleet Footwork move speed stacking is the real tech. Fleet Footwork with Overheal with Q is going to give you an extra health barrier. That's going to be pretty valuable overall. 10% plus 10 max health, I believe, is the value of the shield. We have Nimbus Cloak, so that our summoner spells gives us more movement speed. We run Celerity because Fleet Footwork and Soul Stealing and summoner spells are all going to give movement speed. It's a lot of power here. people tend to be running attack speed for the offensive stat shard. You want to run raw attack damage. She has very, very poor attack speed scaling. Legend Tenacity is better than Legend Alacrity. Again, she has very poor attack speed scaling. You don't get much out of those stats, but being able to survive getting caught out is what matters. That's what, Tenacity, that's what the defensive options in the Flex options can be. Yes, Flex can go anywhere, sure, but oftentimes you are going to skew more towards defense because as long as Senna doesn't get one shot, right? Basically, Senna will always outscale the enemy support. So as long as you don't lose the game early, you will always eventually win. So you don't have to rush for souls early on. You don't have to take risky plays because if bot lane goes equal, no kills, no deaths, and your team's down 3 CS, you have won that lane. The pressure is not on you. So whatever you can do to survive is good. Fleet footwork, very good for that. QWQ, EQR is the early skill combo. Obviously Q max, W second, W is the delayed root, E is the camouflage. And here's what I talked about before with there being multiple viable builds. Eclipse, Divine Sunderer, and Frostfire Gauntlet, even after the nerf, are all very good. Frostfire Gauntlet is actually your highest win rate option. If you are going for Frostfire Gauntlet build where you are health stacking, Frostfire, Divine Sunderer, things like that, you probably are skipping Cut Down, but keep in mind Cut Down is often her best rune if you aren't going to be health stacking, because turns out it looks really good to, just always deal a ton of bonus damage because you don't ever buy any bonus HP. That can feel really good. If you are willing to play Tank Senna is the best option because, again, she always outscales. So as long as you don't die, it's always going to be good. Keep in mind that Senna does not have many good offensive damage scalers. Her crit damage is lower than normal, and that actually feeds through into Rage Blade, so crit is not a very good scaler. She has like 100% bonus attack speed at level 1, so she's essentially always half value on attack speed purchases. So attack speed is not a very good buy either, which is why Legend Alacrity is not a very good option. And she prints so much raw AD that by late game, once we're on 3 items or 4 items or whatever, well, we've already got 120 souls. We've already got, 150 raw AD. Oh, well, the value of raw AD has also been devalued somewhat. So we don't really care about that one so much anymore either. And so we can see that, oh, okay, all of the common offensive stats aren't very good. It's why her good options are things like armor penetration, like lethality, like ability haste, of just doing the things more. It's why tank builds are good on her. Ultimately, Axiom Arc and Black Cleaver are 100% always going to be the items you pick up second and third after your Mythic. In the case of Black Cleaver, it does give you some durability, but these are high ability haste items. They give you, damage scalers through lethality or armor shred. Keep in mind, Senna applies 2 stacks of Black Cleaver when she auto attacks, one for the auto attack itself and one for the on-hit effect that happens, via it being a, just the bonus damage on her passive is a second hit, so she stacks that very quickly. So that's a really good armor penetration option, and it helps your team as well. Senna, of course, is often around other AD champions. She is still frequently with attack damage champions in her lane, so that's going to just give damage to your Samira or your Ashe or whatever. You are going to be going often for the utility boots. People often go for Swifties, but cooldown boots are very, very good as well. The move speed is certainly a bit nice, but Lucidity is very, very strong and really worth considering. And then as far as late game buffs are concerned, we can go even more aggressive with Yomi's Ghostblade. We can go for really utility focus with the Wardstone. Or we can just go Guardian Angel as a simple durability option that still gives us some damage scaling on top. It doesn't feel too bad. We have one final dark tech build that is really, really out there, but actually pretty good, and it's pure support Senna. It is Locket first item into Redemption, into Wardstone, into Black Cleaver. You are still getting a decent amount of ability haste, but you are just completely ramping your heal and shield value. It's going to be the same runes, it's going to be the same setup otherwise, but we're running Locket, we're running Redemption, and it's actually going to look pretty good. This is, I've only played it once, and I screwed up my early learning phase and got picked off a little bit, but the amount of durability she provides is very, very good. You're giving your whole team armor and MR, and again, Senna doesn't have good offensive options, right? The less offense you buy, the better Senna is doing by every way I can possibly measure it, right? When you go from Kraken Slayer to Eclipse or Sunderer, she does better. When you go from Eclipse or Sunderer to Frostfire Gauntlet, she does better. When you go from Frostfire Gauntlet to Locket, she does better. The more effort you put into, I can't die, my team can't die, I will always eventually kill everyone because I scale infinitely, that's going to look better and better and better and better as time goes on. So this is the real dark tech. This is a little bonus 11th option, but these are the OP things to try in 11.24. I expect very few of these to be nerfed in the new patch and start of season, so try these out. They should be a lot of fun. I think they're all really good options. Now, I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.